Gentleman right there. Here, we got the mic coming around. Just go ahead and I'll repeat the question. All right, well, here you go. We got some cooperation here. That's good.
Just like passing the beer down at the stadium.
There you go.
My name's Ben Danson, and I'm a public high school teacher at Penncrest High School, another of our fine Central League schools.
I gather that these are rivals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
my question is this. We've just heard about the resignation of the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Yeah. And we also hear quite a bit in the news about the housing crisis. But I'm interested in the second part of his title, and that is urban development. We have crumbling city neighborhoods, crime-ridden city neighborhoods within a very few miles of here, the city of Chester, much of the city of Philadelphia, and most shamefully, the lack of any significant rebuilding in the city of New Orleans. And I'm curious what you would do as president to improve the urban development piece of that department, and especially bring New Orleans back to where it needs to be.
That's a great question. Great question. Our cities have been neglected for a very long time. And part of it has been politics. I mean, frankly, because historically a lot of cities voted Democratic. This administration's attitude, I think, was, why are we going to invest in cities? But here's the simple truth. As our cities go, so do our suburbs go. So do our rural communities go. Our cities, when they are vital, generate economic growth across the economy. When they are crumbling, they are a drag on the entire economy. So when we invest in cities, we're investing in America. And that means we're going to have to revamp how the Housing and Urban Development Department runs. It starts with what you were talking about, developing infrastructure. New Orleans is an extreme example where the neglect there was inexcusable, and I think finally broke this idea that somehow a political philosophy that says you're on your own can actually work for America. That was the political philosophy of the Bush administration. And as much as anything, what happened during Katrina showed the American people that's not who we are. We reject that notion that people should be on rooftops begging to be rescued. And we've got an incompetent government that can't come to their aid. So in New Orleans, as an extreme example, we've got to rebuild levees. That's an infrastructure project. We've got to rebuild schools. I was down there visiting, and schools are still taking place in trailer parks. We're going to have to rebuild hospitals and police stations. So there's a lot of basic bricks and mortar that has to be done. Now, we've allocated the money. Part of the reason that has happened has been the bureaucracy has been so incompetent that we haven't gotten it done. Money's actually been allocated in New Orleans. It hasn't been allocated across the country. And that's why I believe we've got to have a major infrastructure rebuilding project generally. And I proposed $60 billion in infrastructure reinvestment, a fund that's created in part by reducing our expenditures on the war in Iraq over the next several years. It goes beyond infrastructure, though. You mentioned crime earlier. And although we've seen crime levels drop over the last couple of years, in Philadelphia, for example, the crime rate is still inexcusable. Part of the reason we're not doing more is we don't have enough cops on the streets. And the federal government should reinstate a program that I give Bill Clinton credit for starting, called the COPS program. Joe Biden worked on it as well, that puts more police officers on the streets. Part of the reason that New York has been so successful in reducing crime is that it has many more police officers per capita than most big cities. And they deploy those police officers wisely in terms of intervening and getting to know the community before crime erupts. And using those kinds of strategies, we can drastically reduce crime, and that then becomes, that creates the capacity to bring small businesses back into the neighborhoods, get street traffic back on the neighborhoods, people start rebuilding homes in those neighborhoods, and you see economic growth generally. So reducing crime has to be a top priority in those communities. And that's going to require a significant investment as well. One last point I want to make, though, is on the education front. Cities are often losing businesses because the workforces aren't adequately trained. And so we've got to invest, especially where kids are poor, to make sure that they are getting the kind of start they need before they get to school. And when I talk about early childhood education, I'm not just talking about pre-K, I'm talking about getting to at-risk parents when that child is born, teaching them how to parent, teaching them how to read to their kids, providing them support to get them to a doctor so that child gets a regular checkup, gets diagnosed for hearing and vision impairment, having after-school programs and summer school programs so the kids have someplace to go, capturing the imagination of kids who may not go to a four-year college, but letting them know, if they've got artistic talent, they can become a graphic designer, matching them up and starting them early in community college programs. Or if they've got an interest mechanically, that we can match them up in an apprenticeship program so they can become a welder or a tradesman that can support a family. Those kinds of strategies, that helps rebuild cities as well. Ultimately, cities are people. And if the people there are thriving and doing well, then the cities will thrive and do as well. And if the cities thrive, all of America thrives. So, excellent question.